So I've watched a lot of Dahmer things. I watched a Dahmer reenactment movie. I watched Dahmer and Me. I can't remember if that was like a cartoon, but there was one like about a guy who was like friends with Dahmer when they were in grade school.
It
And then there
wasn't
was
like
one called-
about Jeffrey Dahmer and his dog.
yeah. No, there's one called the Dahmer Files, I think, and it's interviewing people who knew Dahmer. So one of the people was the cop who interviewed Dahmer and got him to confess. One of them was like his neighbor. He brought down a sandwich and gave her a sandwich to eat one day. And like at one point in her interview, she's like, I ate a sandwich that he made for me. I probably ate a person. Probably ate a person. You could tell she was just like freaked out, completely freaked out that he probably, I mean, the truth of it is he probably gave her, I think he confessed to her. Somehow he says that he gave her a human meat to eat.
Do you think he would go that far?
Oh, yeah. Do I think he'd go that?
Doesn't seem.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't seem like something he'd do. Make somebody else eat human flesh.
You think that's the line?
Yeah, I
There's
think
a-
that's his line. I think there's only so much Jeffrey Dahmer would do. I think you're demonizing him.
You're right. I mean, you could drill a hole into somebody's brain, fill it with Clorox, trying to zombify them, but making someone eat human meat, that's too far.
Yeah, I think so.
Welcome to a very thankful edition of Lost and Found and Rewound. I'm Chris Lost,
I'm Found Jim.
And I am Rick Rewound.
and we should say, as we start the episode, that there was a major political event in our country recently where our incumbent leader lost an election and now refuses to participate in his duties. So my question to you both is, what happens to the turkey if he doesn't pardon it? We were just talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and the sadistic things that he would do with meat.
I think he'll cut the turkey's neck live on television and blame Joe Biden for the death of the turkey.
That was my question. I was going to ask, will it be beheaded on every major network Thanksgiving morning? So I think so.
I wouldn't put it past.
The new tradition.
Yeah, blood sacrifice.
President Fitz.
I think that's what we're missing in our political system is blood sacrifice. We haven't had enough of that.
It's going back to Wicker Man
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
It should be definitely more Wicker Man happening.
Speaking of food, I should say that Lost and Found and Rewound is brought to you by the good people at Lito's Pizza. For the best pizza and shrimp dinner around, it's all good at Lito's. Fellas, want to do something special for the missus? Instead of whipping up that usual Tuesday night chicken Devon, have a delicious pizza meal delivered just minutes before she gets home from the office. Lito's Pizza in Countryside, Illinois. It's all good at Lito's. Order online at orderlitospizza.com.
Are they giving us money?
No, don't worry about it.
I'm looking at my bank account and I'm not seeing any bump there.
I'm just trying to keep them open. If we're going to keep the show going.
You just want it's purely self-interest. It's like you want to make sure that it's open when we actually get back together in person a year from now.
I'd take it even further. How are we getting back together if they're not open?
I hate to tell you this, but I haven't been eating cheese lately, so I don't even know if I would eat a pizza. Lots has changed in the world, man. I think you're going to have to deal with it.
You can order a pizza without cheese.
That's right.
That's true. Yeah, you can. My kids can't have dairy. We order pizza all the time.
What's the point?
So now it's time for a segment we like to call I Apologize. I want to apologize to Rick for being overly antagonistic on this podcast. I've been listening back to some episodes, and sometimes I really am that infuriatingly ignorant, and sometimes I just try and get Rick's goat. So that's not a friendly thing to do. So I'm sorry, Rick.
As long as it makes for good radio and keeps the sponsors happy.
Right, exactly. Once again, our sponsor, Lito's Pizza. Go on, order pizza right now. Order one right now. On behalf of Richard Attenborough, I want to apologize to Walter Hill for ripping off the Cyrus scene in Warriors. I forgot to mention last episode that at the 55-minute, 48-second mark, there's a scene in Gandhi that is clearly a nod to the Cyrus speech in the Warriors, the "Can you dig it" speech. If you watch that, you can see that Richard Attenborough totally ripped off Walter Hill.
Wow.
Check it out.
That's pretty That's pretty strong meat there.
I checked the dates. 77 was Warriors, 82 was Gandhi.
Yeah.
I had David Attenborough in my head. I was thinking, I was like, how is he going to tie the Warriors into some nature documentary?
Exactly.
David Attenborough ripped off the Warriors? I was confused.
I saw him talking to the Queen one time. That was interesting.
David or Richard?
David, they had him walking around talking to the Queen.
That's all my wife is watching now is The Crown.
Yeah, I almost got interested. Like, people are having mixed feelings about Margaret Thatcher now.
Oh, speaking of Thatcher, England and stuff, I just watched Arthur Matthews, who co-wrote Father Ted. It was actually with Richard Herring, was interviewing him. And Richard Herring mentioned this skit that he had written, Arthur Matthews, yeah, he had written for this other comedian, Kevin Eldon, who's in stuff like Black Books and things, or he shows up but he had his own TV show I'd never really seen. But he mentioned this skit, and I looked it up on YouTube, and it's there, of course. Type in Kevin Eldon and Sex Pistols. I think the video's from '76. Was that?
She didn't. I think she
Was
got
that-
elected in '79, right? But
after-
she was.
yeah,
she
that
was
was later.
already.
This Sex Pistols was earlier.
Yeah.
They weren't
They.
reacting to her.
No, they were.
But-
But she might have been. Yeah, she was already pretty. I think she was well known by then. She was that. I think she was
Yeah.
the head of the Conservative Party by then, right?
Guys, I was a narcissistic monster, self-involved monster in the 80s. Can you help me out? Was Margaret Thatcher good or bad? I didn't care, and I don't know.
She was like Reagan. She helped launch 1,000 great albums.
Right on.
If you're a minor, you probably wouldn't like her. The miners didn't like her. I know that.
That's very specific.
Literally, yeah, the miners. Not young people, but people who work underground.
Young people didn't like her either, though. I think a lot
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
I would argue that she set in motion cutting of social services than Reagan did.
I wonder if this is the first time she's being portrayed on film.
I think it's just that, yeah, what's her name from X-Files is attractive, and so people are like, I don't want to be attracted to Margaret Thatcher.
Gillian Anderson?
Gillian Anderson, that's right. It's causing confusion with people. They don't want to be attracted to or feel empathy for Margaret Thatcher.
Well, attractive people aren't bad people.
Exactly. I know it's I actually read some stuff about Margaret Thatcher because I haven't watched The Crown, but I'm more in depth about Margaret Thatcher. I only kind of know superficial political stuff, but like her background and everything like that is about class and everything like that. And she made a pretty substantial leap in the class system. Margaret Thatcher did. So in a way, she's an outsider. I never realized that. I just assumed because she had that posh accent that she was the equivalent of David Cameron, Tony Blair, all those kind of rich kids who, regardless of what party affiliation they had, they all went through the same elite system. But Boris Johnson. Right? Yeah. They all went to school together, right? They're all from the same Pink Floyd, The Wall, meat grinder, right? That's how you have to, Americans our age just interpret all of England, right, is through the lens of Roger Waters.
If you can't eat your meat, you won't get your pudding.
Exactly. That's how we understand the UK.
By posh accent, do you mean British accent?
No, I mean that she was not
Upper class.
She did not come from the upper classes. Her dad was a store shopkeeper or something. And so that's the kind of story you hear in America all the time, right? Even if it's sometimes bullshit, it's pretty substantial what she did in terms of leapfrogging in the class system in the UK.
Steve Jobs did it.
Yeah, Steve Jobs. Yeah.
I don't know. Was he good looking? He's kind of weird looking. Now that I think about it. My final apology is for saying that Brokeback Mountain had 2 of the great superhero movie villains in it. Brokeback Mountain, of course, had 3 of the great superhero villains in it. So I'm sorry for that mistake as well.
Who's the third?
Well, there's Heath Ledger. He won the Oscar for his role as the Joker. And then Jake Gyllenhaal, I thought, was a great Mysterio in Spider-Man Far From Home. And then Anne Hathaway rivaled Eartha Kitt as Selena Kyle in The Dark Knight Rises. Pop quiz for you guys. What did Kit stand for in the hit TV show Knight Rider?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I should know that.
We will
don't.
go to Rick first.
Thanks a lot. Knight Industries Tactical something.
Jim, you can steal.
Yeah,
Rick is
that's-
wrong.
That's very close. That's. I was thinking. I was like, I got the Knight. The K must be Knight something. I forgot about Knight Industries.
You're still in the game. You're still in the game, Jim.
Knight Industries Tactical
2000.
run out of letters.
2000.
2000.
Knight Industries. 2000.
Really, 2000.
So is it KITT?
2000.
Is it
KITT. Just like
KITT. Okay,
just
God.
like Eartha Kitt.
2000?
Wow.
That's
So it's TT. Yeah, I always thought it was just KIT.
KITT 2000.
That seems
Very
like
weird
lazy
acronym.
writing.
It does, doesn't it? That's why I thought it was funny. Anyway, and then last thing is we should thank Marv from Pods Like Us for having us on his show. We taped a show with him last week. Presumably by the time this comes out, it won't be out yet, but it will be out soon enough. So thank you, Marv, for having us on.
Yeah,
guys,
thanks.
any messages for Marv?
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, it was great. I hope we didn't keep him up too late. He was 6 hours later
Oh,
in
yeah.
England.
That's right.
It was like way after midnight. We talked a long time, but he seemed fine with it.
It did.
Yeah, but their day is like set around our day, right? Like every
That's right.
They,
Our clock is the clock that rules all. So yeah, the rest of the world follows our schedule.
I'm pretty sure that's what happens.
You know, I have a crackpot theory about time zones. I have a theory that Midwestern kids from our generation are different and have a more fleshed out sense of humor because all the late night shows were on an hour earlier for us. Because if you think about like having to watch Saturday Night Live when you were a kid at 11:30 at night and it ending at 1 in the morning instead of 10:30.
and it was the same on both, like on the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
That's 100% correct, that theory. I mean,
Yeah,
that
sounds
aligns with all. No, I believe that because I believe that
Yeah.
I was raised by television. I mean, and I definitely watched Letterman and I watched
SCTV.
SNL, SCTV. I did watch SCTV. So, yeah.
Even the SCTV was on late here too, though. I mean, since on the weekends it was on. It was late. It started at 11:30, like Saturday Night Live on the coast. So that was definitely late here, also.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, why are the Canadians so funny? Or is it just because they're weird? Because they're Canadian?
I guess I would have to look at their television schedule in the 1970s and 80s, and then I'd be able to tell you.
Rick, what media have you been consuming?
Oh, geez, you know what? I don't think I've been keeping track. I'm getting, like, I used to at least keep track of that. Now it's, you know, after that whole discussion we had with Marv about how prepared you are, Chris, that revealed the lack of preparation I do for the show compared to what you do. And now I'm thinking that I didn't even prepare the minimal amount that I used to prepare.
You got to at least do that. Got to at least keep
I
track
know.
of your watch list.
I'm looking at it. I did watch the Hallex documentary that Jim talked about last time, which was great.
I did too. The bass
And you
player
didn't
was
even mention
incredible.
Mike Post in that documentary.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
how-
yeah. It's a surprise. It was
yeah, it was great.
saved it, so you were.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was amazing.
I don't know who Mike Post is.
It's the composer who did every single TV show in the
Oh, yeah.
80s.
Like Magnum PI, and they went through all his credits, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was great.
Doogie
Rockford,
Howser.
Rockford,
Your favorite, Chris? One of your favorites?
I do love Doogie Howser.
Rockford Files was definitely their breakthrough. Him and Pete Carpenter was the older guy, the kind of, I think, old school film TV composer that he partnered up with. He was like the rock and roller, I get the feeling, at Mike Post. And then they had that Rockford Files breakthrough. A-Team, right? Did the A-Team theme.
Hey, that's a great
Yeah.
song. Can I be clear about something? I never watched the show Doogie Howser, but I did draw down on the concept a lot in conversation. Like the idea of a kid who was so smart he could be a doctor.
I remember some lyrics, you singing something about
Yeah.
Doogie Howser, so I assumed you were obsessed with the show. But
Well, it's a song called Dancing Sarah, and it's about a friend of ours dancing, how good of a dancer she was. And the line was, "You may be smart, but you know you ain't no Doogie Howser. And when little Sarah's dancing, you know we're all the eyes in the Howser." Which I was pretty proud of that. Love getting in a Doogie Howser reference. Sorry. But I've never seen the show. Never seen one full episode ever.
Yeah, and I didn't know. That actually makes me think less of Mike Post that he did the theme to Doogie Howser. I'd never seen it. Yeah, not to go too deeply into this, but yeah, just because a kid's smart doesn't mean that he has the adult mind to operate, have empathy for other human beings, and make them better. I mean, he's still a teenager, right? Is that what the
Yeah,
show?
it's a terrifying show. Terrifying concept.
I don't think empathy is a quality you want in a surgeon.
Right, that's true. Actually, yeah, I remember I had a song about that. It's just like I read an article about how better doctors are more closer to being psychopaths than being empathetic. You have to be able to treat a human as a object if you're going to cut into them and possibly lose them on the table. If you make a mistake, you can't really be too invested in who those people are.
Yeah, like think about if Jeffrey Dahmer were a surgeon, he'd be incredible.
Yeah,
He didn't
just
give
think a
shit.
little bit of education, maybe a little, just a push in another direction. And it makes me think I just spent a huge amount of time talking to my younger son about who the Unabomber was, and I can't remember why, but just the whole story of the Unabomber, the fact that he was a Chicago public school kid that was very intelligent and went to Harvard when he was 16. Kind of the Doogie Howser scenario turned upside down, and that was at the time that not just Timothy Leary, but there was a guy there who's doing a lot of research for the military on kind of like brainwashing or how to manipulate people. And Ted Kaczynski, 16-year-old from Chicago, gets dropped into the Harvard environment with a bunch of people 2 to 4 to 20 years older than him, and then is part of this experiment that this psychology professor is doing and is really terrible sounding. Like this, the classic 50s, 60s psych experiment stuff that movies are made about.
MK Ultra and the
subjected.
prison experiment.
Yeah,
and
like the Stanford
all those,
prison.
yeah.
Stanley Milgram, the psychologist, the researcher, Milgram experiments. So that environment, Ted Kaczynski was in that environment, and there's some very persuasive. I think somebody wrote a book about it. Some persuasive arguments that environment made him who he was.
I don't think college is for education. I think it's for maturation. And so sending a 16-year-old to college, that's the dumbest thing you can do. It should be for 18 to 22-year-olds to grow up and, learn how to drink without throwing up. And
because now the research shows that people that age, 18 to 24, 18 to 22, your brain is still really plastic and susceptible to impulse. You have problems with impulse control and everything like that. And so, people don't like to acknowledge that a large part of college is kind of young adult daycare.
yeah,
right. It's just
exactly.
kind of
That's
warehousing
exactly what
them
it is.
until they're ready to actually be adults. Like what you would term
Our
as
mom
adult.
went to college when
Yeah.
she was 16.
Yeah, she was fine.
But she commuted. She didn't. So that's different.
yeah, she didn't go
And
to
actually,
Harvard, right? Yeah.
They were
Well, she went to Brown, right?
But later,
Did she go to-
later, she wasn't
Later.
16
Oh.
at an Ivy League.
No.
Yeah, she went
in
later.
Chicago. A friend of our parents knew the Kaczynskis.
Yeah.
Knew his younger brother, was the same age as his younger brother, the one who turned him in. Actually, Tim turned his younger brother turned to him, talked to the FBI and said, "I think my brother's the Unabomber."
I was just going to say there was that spread in Time magazine after he was arrested years ago, and they had his yearbook photo from Chicago, like the high school in Chicago, and one of our dad's college friends was, in the photo of all the people from the high school. I think my dad was like, "Oh, I just saw you," send an email to his friend or called his friend and said, "Hey, I just saw you in Time magazine. You're in that yearbook photo, of the classic yearbook photo where they show the serial killer or the Hollywood star and, all those other random people that are, next to them in the yearbook."
So, Jim, you're reading the New York Times, and they're publishing a letter from a man who's been blowing up people through the mail. You read it, and you realize Rick has written this letter. What do you do?
Well, I call you first, Chris. First off, I ask you your advice. I think that's what I do. So what would you tell me, Chris?
He did it. Ricky did it. He's
classic.
the best at hard-hitting questions.
Just a pure deflection.
Let me ask you, okay, this question. How old am I when you call me? We've known each other we've known each other as friends since I was 19 years old, I would say. So that's your
Yeah.
range, 19 to 50. How old am I when you call?
Ooh, I don't know. Let's say 25.
Ooh, sorry, Rick. That's where I hit my self-righteous period. It would be you've got to turn him in for his sake and for the sake of the people he's blowing up.
Honestly, I tell you, if I would write something like that, I would disguise my writing style so it wouldn't be instantly familiar to Jim that it was me writing. I'd know in the back of my mind, Jim would probably tell Chris about this, so I'm going to
And
Right
Chris
in
would
a-
probably turn me in, that self-righteous asshole.
so I'm going to change my voice for these letters that I'm publishing, these manifestos.
I'm glad you're in that mindset because the next hard-hitting questions for you, Rick. You're around one of your exploits. Somebody blows up, right? And a piece of them falls into your bag because you're just kind of watching to see what happens. You go home. Would you make a sandwich out of that piece of person that fell into your bag, and would you feed it to a neighbor, or is that where you draw the line?
I'm a vegetarian. I'm a vegan right now. I think humans fall under the umbrella of meat, right?
Yeah, I didn't ask if you would eat it. I'm
Oh.
asking if you would feed it to a neighbor. Would you make it as a barbecue sandwich and give it to your neighbor?
That's an interesting question. What do you think I would do, Jim? Doesn't work the same. He does it so much better.
Jim thinks you'd call me and ask.
Yeah.
I think I maybe go over and say, would you like this? I found this piece of meat in my bag. I don't eat meat. Would you like it?
I hate to see it go to
I
waste.
hate to see it go to waste. This looks like a nice cut. I'd hate to see it go to waste.
All right, what's the next thing on your list, Rick?
Most of what I've been watching has been with my younger son. So I watched Tokyo Drift, which I didn't realize is like what little I know about the Fast and Furious universe. None of those people, well, they were. Somebody showed up right at the end, right? But it's kind of like Halloween 3, right? We talked about Halloween 3 recently. It's kind of like the Halloween 3 of the Fast and Furious franchise, right?
That's sort of the beauty of that series. Is the first film was a Point Break ripoff. The second film was a loose sequel. The third film, Tokyo Drift, was, like you say, just completely way out there. Had almost nothing to do with it, and that had that character Han in it. And then I think Vin Diesel shows up at the end or something, makes a cameo. And I can't remember what the fourth one was like, but I think from 5 on, James Wan took over the universe and wove all those films back into it masterfully. I mean, actually, I know you guys aren't too high on tentpole action films, but there's something to be said for what James Wan did to rescue what was really just a series of crappy movies with some nice adrenaline moments in them back into what is now, I would consider another superhero series of films. But you guys don't care because you don't like those movies. Did you like Tokyo Drift?
I
I thought it was okay.
haven't seen any of those movies.
Yeah.
Should I watch them? I should watch them all, right? And there's so many. How many? There's like 9 of them, 7.
There's British people in them, so you might like that.
Yeah, actually, there'll probably be somebody. Yeah, will show up. You'll be like, "Oh, that's so and so from, the minister's wicket or something."
I'm tempted to. Yeah,
I guarantee it.
better late than never.
What's her name is in it? She's the older, gorgeous British woman. She plays the mother of the 2 British villains. I can't remember her name, but she's like in a hard-nosed British cop TV show that I'm sure you've probably watched, Jim. We'll figure it out later. What else have you watched, Rick?
So the Alex Rider TV series, which is Alex Rider, is something that like 11 or 12-year-old boys read. It's like James Bond for 12-year-olds, even though James Bond is for 12-year-olds also, but it's a teenager who's a spy, a British spy, and they've made a TV series. And this is how warped already my younger son has been by not just my influence, but also his uncle's influence, because from watching Taskmaster, there was a character, one of the kids in the show. My son said, "Is that Noel Fielding's child? He looks like Noel Fielding. Is that Noel Fielding's kid?" And it's like, what other 11-year-old in Central Illinois is asking that kind of question, right? And then so already spinning him off into weirdness, right? And then I looked up the kid, and it's not Noel Fielding's son. It's Arthur Cave. I can't remember which twin of Nick Cave's sons, whichever one didn't die, is a character in the show. Nick Cave's kid. I was like, oh no, that's Nick Cave's kid. And then we watched a Nick Cave video. So that was I'm dooming this child to.
Did you take him aside and punch him in the stomach just to say, you need to get used to this?
It's just so weird.
You could have taken the opportunity to like introduce him to Wim Wenders movies, like because Nick Cave's in Wings of Desire.
Right, exactly.
They play the band in the one scene.
Yeah, instead of Skeleton Tree, I made him watch. I was like, oh, what Nick Cave video? And I was trying to think of what video to watch, and then we watched. Is it called Jesus Alone or something? Oh, it's a devastating song, and it's filmed by the guy who did The Killing of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. That guy.
Oh.
He shot a really great Nick Cave film. Speaking of the Roger Deakins, Team Deakins podcast, a cinematographer interviews Roger Deakins and his wife about 7 or 8 scenes from The Killing of Jesse James, and it's like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hour conversation about like the minutia of the lighting in that movie and how great that movie is. So
I love that movie.
Oh, it's amazing.
Do you guys like that movie? Yeah.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, you have to see it. Yes. It's very and that's what we're talking about, is like how film nerds, especially cinematography nerds, like even more specific, are just nuts over that movie, and then how little attention it got. I don't know what the details are, but like Roger Deakins was like, I don't understand why what is it, Andrew Dominic? I can't remember his name. Hasn't directed more films. He's done a little bit. It's definitely one of the first films I saw where it was like, okay, Terrence Malick is a genre now. It's not just that people are, making films that reference Terrence Malick. It's like, oh, this is a whole genre. There's so many movies that do Terrence Malick things, right? That I don't think it's simply an influence anymore. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do the Terrence Malick thing. It's really like, oh, he created a genre, which is, to me, bigger than, well, you could say maybe Alfred Hitchcock did that, right? But even like you think about Stanley Kubrick, he's got a style, and there are people who try to be Kubrick, but I feel like somehow people who do these Terrence Malick movies, it's more expansive than that, right? It's like the cinematography and the scenes of people just out in nature and all that kind of stuff. And that's the thing about the Jesse James film, is it's, even if he's doing a Terrence Malick movie, he's doing it on the same level as Terrence Malick.
I'm with you, Rick. I think it is a genre, and I think you can, if you do it well, it's not stealing, because I think there's a commitment there that requires a tremendous amount of artistry that you can't just rip off. Ari Aster arguably could be doing Malick-esque horror. Some of those longer, beautiful scenes in Midsommar were Malick-esque, I would argue.
Yeah. I watched the Borat movie. It's not my thing, but it hit pretty hard home anti-Semitism and didn't let off the idea that in addition to good old American racism, there's still a strain of anti-Semitism in the world too. So that's a weird takeaway from the movie, but I thought that was interesting when I was watching it. I don't like people being fooled and being put in uncomfortable situations.
I thought it was funnier when he was making fun of himself, like when they did things that made them look like clowns and people were reacting to it. I thought that was the fun part of the movie. And I thought the woman that played the girl in it was fantastic. I thought she was really good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah. None of that could have been pulled off without her.
Kansas City. Food-wise, a city famous for its barbecue. But that's about to change. My name is W. Dave Keith, host of the podcast Taco the Town, and I believe that Kansas City is one of the most underrated, underappreciated, up-and-coming taco towns in the USA. On Taco the Town, we will shine a light on all the amazing tacos Kansas City has to offer. Kansas City is a great taco town filled with a variety of untapped taco stylings and flavors, and on the Taco the Town podcast, we won't stop until we've tasted every taco in the town. No taco table will go unturned. Each episode, we review a new taco joint with a special guest. We share taco memories, discuss taco topics, and put tacos to the test. We check the latest stories in taco news, and no taco is off the table on Taco the Town. If you love tacos, like I do, you're gonna love Taco the Town. Available on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, and Google Play. That's Taco the Town.
All right, Jim, on that high note, what did you watch? What was your media consumption?
Calling back to Marv's interview with us, I brought up the movie Letter Never Sent.
Yeah.
And I hadn't watched that in a while because I'd said it was one of my favorite movies. And so I figured I should watch it again to see if it really was one of my favorite movies. Or and it is. It's really good. It's like a Russian movie. I don't know. Yeah, like you said, I don't know if this is coming out before or after the interview. Or
Oh, it doesn't matter, Jim.
yeah, I know. It's
We reference things.
It's a different show.
We reference stuff that hasn't come out all the time. That's what we do on this show.
That's what this is all about.
Right.
I forgot. But yeah, it's like the Russian movie from like 1959 or 60, and it seems like a really old-fashioned movie. Like it could have come out 30 years, like in the early 30s or something. But it's just about geologists who go into the heart of Siberia in the summer on this expedition looking for diamonds. I forgot that's what they were looking for. It's just a beautiful black and white movie. It's very melodramatic. It's a bit hammy in places. It's very Soviet and a bit propaganda. It's still really great. It's just so beautiful. It's mainly the cinematography and pulling out all the stops, stuffing the film full of camera tricks and infrared film and superimposing double shots, like lots of things superimposed onto each other. And
It's infrared black and white?
yeah.
I thought infrared film had sort of a reddish tone to it, but are you saying that reddish
No.
tone isn't on it?
No. Infrared black and white. It makes anything with like chlorophyll, like any green plants turn white. Back in the film days, I shot some black and white still film. It's really cool. It was really fun to shoot stuff. It's hard it's not that hard, but to do it in movie film, I think is pretty difficult. This is the only movie I've ever seen with infrared, and infrared film, black and white film also is kind of grainy, really grainy. And yeah, all the trees look white, and it has to be from shooting film, infrared film. I remember it's really slow because you have to use a filter. You don't have to have an infrared filter, but you can use like a really deep red filter. So you have to do it in bright sunlight or else a tripod with really long exposure. So to do it with a movie camera, obviously it's got to be really bright and really bright lens. So the shots in this movie are very blurry, and it's them running through the forest, and it's all white, and it's still sharp. You can see stuff, and it's amazing. And I've just never seen that in another movie. I mean, people kind of fake stuff now, like with digital. Like I was thinking of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? The Coen Brothers movie, where I remember seeing something, probably a documentary, a little thing on the DVD or something of them describing what they did, like the digital tricks, like what are the sirens? They, lure them. They're at the river, and they did a bunch of stuff with the film. At some point, there's digital processing going on, and it's all changed, like from the real shots, and they show the difference. And I never even thought of that. It was kind of the beginning of all that stuff when people started messing with the digital stuff, and it completely changes the whole mood. It was like, I think it made it look more autumnal or something. But so it's much easier to do stuff like that now, but back in 1959 or whatever, it's like, let's shoot this infrared film. And it must have been hard to do because like I said, I've never seen it in any other movies really, but I'm sure it's somewhere. But I've seen plenty of still photography in infrared, but yeah, movie film is different. But it's only a few shots. It's just this one part of the movie, but it really stands out. But the rest of it is gorgeous. I started watching another British TV show I'd watched a long time ago. It was watching them again. It's called Omega Factor. It's Louise Jameson left Doctor Who. She was like, what's her name? She was Leela, right? The companion Doctor Who, and she left. This is probably the first thing she did after she left. That it's like 1979 or something. It's only one. I think it was just 1 year. It was like 6 or 7 episodes or something like that. It's like all filmed in Edinburgh, Scotland. It's really moody and interesting. You're talking about Pink Floyd. There's lots of Pink Floyd actually gets played. So I have a feeling somebody must have known. I've never read anything like, did they know somebody in the production? They asked, could we play some of this stuff? Because it's just like a BBC production. I don't know if you have to pay Pink Floyd, to have your song in the. It just doesn't seem like there would be a budget for Pink Floyd music. But a few times in a few episodes, they're just playing Pink Floyd records. And it's like,
was it like Saucer
must be
Full
some
of Secrets, Pink Floyd, or was it
no, like current? It was this was like
Shine On You
1979.
Crazy Diamond, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Wish You
Yeah.
Were Here,
On the Run?
Pink Floyd?
The one with the arpeggiator.
No.
Doodly doodly
No,
doodly doodly.
it's just the really drifty, some of the really, I can't try to think of what, like just the really moody stuff. But there's just a few scenes where there's like, I just figured there's some kind of connection. Someone, or they knew somebody, it was a friend of somebody. It was like in Pink Floyd, and they're like, oh, sure, you can, I like this show or something. You can use that. But it's almost like a precursor to like X-Files or something, or, well, I guess, like, is it Chris Carter who made X-Files? I remember saying that he was influenced by, Kolchak, Night Stalker.
Oh, yeah, Night Stalker, yeah.
So maybe this Omega Factor was influenced by Night Stalker or something. I don't know. It's different, but it's more like X-Files, but it's after Kolchak, or Night Stalker, but before X-Files. So it's like, 1979. But it's about this reporter. So he's like an investigative journalist, but he's got telekinetic, whatever. He's psychic powers. He's got ESP and stuff. And so he gets involved with this secret kind of government organization. But then there's this other secret, not government, this other secret evil organization called Omega or something that he starts uncovering. And a lot of like unresolved stories. It just kind of, each episode is kind of loosely connected, but it's like basically they're just investigating some happening, like X-Files. They go off and look for, there's some specific thing, some weird paranormal activity is happening. So Louise Jameson, who's in Doctor Who, is like his partner, and she's like a doctor or a PhD, like a psychiatrist or something. I can't remember what she is, but
She plays the Anne Gillian character on the show.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why couldn't they have gotten her to beat Thatcher? Right? Why you got to get a U.S. person?
It's not like Night Stalker. It's not as funny. It's serious and it's kind of heavy-handed and a lot of like natural light. A lot of it was filmed, outside, and it looks really cool. And the whole series kind of just ends because I think it got canceled, and they were probably planning on something, the next season. But it sort of just kind of ends. So it's not satisfying in that, but it's just it's very moody. So that's what I liked about it. But
there's an actor friend of mine. I won't name him, but he we were watching. I made him watch Kolchak, the Night Stalker, the whole series. I bought it on eBay back when you could only watch things on DVD. And one of his comments was, "Look, if these people aren't good looking, you wouldn't put people that look like this on television nowadays. This is real television." Like he was really proud of how like unattractive Kolchak was, and he's like, and look at this woman he's dating. Normally they'd pair this ugly old man up with some like 20-year-old bombshell. Look, this woman is just a regular woman. Like he's basically saying, she was not, she wasn't unattractive, but she was just, looked like my mom, in the 70s. So it was, he thought, good on that show for representing real people.
Yeah, that's kind of like, I guess what I like also about British TV, even now, current stuff is like that. There's all this stuff I watch is like kind of normal people, especially on British TV. There's like pretty, just normal people. And I'm not just talking about man in the street, just people who are hosting shows and things and starring in things. And they're not glamorous and pretty, whatever.
They might be chubby.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the UK is about the size of the state of Illinois, right? So you don't have a lot of people to choose from, one thing. And then you can't be surprised when the show business people know each other. Like, of course, Pink Floyd knows the guy who shoots, that show, because they're all like
Omega
probably in the
Factor, yeah.
same apartment building.
Right.
I mean, they're all crammed up in there in London or whatever city it is.
Yeah.
Did I understand that we have a small number of UK followers that we're alienating?
It's smaller now, probably after that. Look, I love the UK. I will say Edinburgh.
Well, you should definitely watch Omega Factor because it's all Edinburgh. If you love Edinburgh, you're going to love Omega Factor. You don't even have to have the sound on. They're just walking all over, wandering on the streets. It's got a great theme song. It's like a harpsichord or something. It sounds like electronic, but I think it's just a harpsichord or a clavichord.
Perhaps played by Rick Wright.
Yeah, probably.
That's who they knew. That's who you get to. Rick Wright, right? He's like, sure, I hate these guys. Just whatever one you want. Money, time, just take it.
He was the first one to quit, right? I'm not totally up on my Pink Floyd trivia, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't an official member of the band by the time they were doing the live performances of The Wall, those few.
I think so, because Waters could play piano, so he didn't need keyboardist.
Yeah, so it's a Bob Ezrin thing. I feel like somebody else was playing piano on some of The Wall. I'm trying to remember who. I think I read a book about Pink Floyd, so I'm enough of a fan to read a whole book about the history of Pink Floyd, but I don't care that much. I'm just like, okay.
Well, you care more than me, and I thought I cared a lot. But like my way of caring is I just listen to the albums incessantly. I don't study up on whether or not one of them stabbed the other one. I don't, it's like I really don't want to know that stuff. I learned at an early age when I met Steve Dahl to never meet your heroes. They're always going to let you down. Steve Dahl was like, he could barely look at me when they introduced me to him. And it was at some bar meet and greet thing. And I was like, okay, I just want to listen to and enjoy the entertainment people. I don't want to meet them. I don't want to know who they are. I don't want to know what they do.
I remember in Champaign, I think it was Gary Meyer and I don't think Steve Dahl. It was the other guy that he had partnered with, and there was a meet and greet there, and we went to it. And Rose said something to Gary Meyer. My wife said something to Gary Meyer, and he was just kind of like, "Yeah." So, just like, "Oh, you've been a really important part of my life," or something like that. It was just like, "Okay, thanks." It's just like so.
Now you know how our fans feel,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
When they meet us.
That was my question. Has anybody ever come up to you, Rick, and said something of that equivalent to you?
Yeah, I try to be better about it. I definitely have problems with it because I don't like compliments, and I think they're wrong usually. It's like, just the way it is when you're a creative person. It's really hard to take a compliment sometimes, especially if somebody tells you that the record they love the most by your band is the one you hate the most. It's like I can't listen to this record. I just hear everything that's wrong with it and think to myself, why didn't we record this record again? And somebody will say, oh, this is your best record. I love it and love it. And so I'll just go, yeah, thank you. So that's all you have to do is you just have to say thank you and smile.
Whenever anybody came up to me, it was like with full of praise, I just say, I don't want to hear it. Just go talk to Rick. Don't even look at me.
It's different for us, though, because it doesn't happen that often. I think for somebody
Right.
who it happens to every day, it's got to be a huge pain in the ass. It's like,
Yeah.
I've heard stories. Somebody told a Paul McCartney story. It's like a super famous person who was eating dinner with Paul McCartney, and they said, can I take a picture with you? And Paul McCartney said, well, make your choice. You're either a friend or a fan. It was basically like, are you going to treat me like a human being, or are you going to be, everybody else? And so they didn't do a picture, but it's like that kind of stuff where it's just like you have to basically say there's everybody else, and then they're the people that I actually want to be around and want to interact with as a human being. Not that my heart bleeds for rich and famous people, but I do understand why they can come off as assholes, because at some point you have no normal human interaction at all in the world.
Yeah.
And so,
Oh, yeah. Totally.
and this is the thing is just thinking about Marathon Man. So there's a moment in Marathon Man where there's a really fit guy running, and he passes him by, and then Dustin Hoffman tries to catch him, and that guy is Treat Williams. if you know who Treat Williams is. And I think Jim was there. It's like one of the first times we were in New York. I remember walking down the street and then seeing this guy, and I recognized him, and we had a moment of recognition, and he looked at me. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, no, that's Treat Williams. I don't know him. But he had that moment, too, where it was like, oh, this is a person I know. So he's famous at the time. You know, not everybody knows who Treat Williams is, but that's got to be weird, too, where it's like there are moments where you see someone and you see in them that moment of recognition. And I felt like he had that moment too, where it was like, oh, is this somebody I know? And then he realized, no, this is just somebody who recognized me. And that's got to be so messed up too.
I had a similar moment, but it was flipped. I had a real rough month on a project, and I took the project team out to a really nice Italian dinner in Los Angeles. And we go to this really nice restaurant, and they're all sitting down, and I'm about to sit down, and I look across the room, and I see this just stunning woman, beautiful woman across the room. And I just take a moment, look at her. She looks at me, locks eyes with me, and goes, hey, and like starts running from across the room. And I mean, this woman looks like a starlet, and she starts running across the room, dragging some guy behind her, and everybody at my table like sees what's going on, and she's far across the room. And I'm like, I don't know who this is. I don't know what I'm going to do when this confrontation happens. This is wild. And the people at the table start to notice her, and they're looking at the guy she's with, and they start staring at me like, why, holy shit, why do these people know Chris? And I'm like, who is this? Who is this person? Who is this? And she's like coming closer and closer and closer and closer. Finally, I'm like face on with her, and she's like, how are you? And I'm like, Ashley, how are you? And I give her this big hug. And she turned out to be somebody who I had met prior. And all these, I look back at the table, and all of the people that I was at dinner with were staring at me. Now, Ashley is an actress, and she's been on several shows. You know, this was early in her career, and I was like, do they recognize her from her shows? And she's like, and this is my fiance, Topher. And it was Topher Grace from that 70s show. And I was like completely oblivious to him, because all I was trying to do was figure out who she was. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you. And then kind of pushed him back. It was like, well, it's just so great to see you. Thanks for coming over. You know, she's like, great. And I just sort of ushered away, because I was so freaked out by someone who had recognized me so clearly that I didn't immediately recognize, which my wife will say, if I were walking down the street in New York and she was walking down the street in New York and it was out of context, I'd just walk right by her and not even look at her or notice her.
Yeah, that's my problem too. It's like everybody I know, it's context. If somebody shows up in the wrong place, in the wrong circle, my brain kind of freezes up. It's like, and if it's somebody I really know, then I'll recognize them. But sometimes it's just like, why would this person even be here? Why would I know that they would show up? Yeah. Context is very important.
Yeah, I completely missed Treat Williams. I mean, we were walking down the street. It was in Manhattan, and Rick was like, did you see who that was? I was like, that was Treat Williams. I was like, what? I was like, completely missed it.
Where would you have recognized him? So what context would have it made sense for you to see Treat Williams?
Like Hair. I remember Hair, the movie Hair. So that's what I think of Treat Williams is from Hair.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else I saw him in.
So
later
if Jim was in that movie, he would have recognized him.
Did I misunderstand the question? What was the question?
You answered it correctly. What else have you, next question, what else have you seen, Jim? What else is on your list?
Yeah, I don't really have anything else.
All right, I'll go through my stuff quickly. I've got some music that I listen to.
Please go through it quickly, Chris, after spending an hour and a half listening to what I had to say and
what you guys have to say always
Jim had to say
is a good, I wouldn't mind listening and never sharing. It's always good. I listened to a band called Gang of Four. I loved it. It was like a slow Minutemen. I actually Entertainment was a great record, but I thought the second one was even better. And I don't know if you guys have checked it out lately, but it sounds a lot like the Minutemen. The second record does. Dr. Feelgood with Wilco Johnson. I loved it. You know, it reminded me a lot of the Replacements, particularly Sorry Ma, I forgot to take out the trash, But then there's this one song, Dr. Feelgood song, where they go, yeah, na 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 na, and it's the exact hook from "You're My Favorite Thing" right before he goes into the chorus. And I was like, uh-oh, I caught you stealing that, Mr. Westerberg. I listened to the band Japan, and it was funny. I listened to Adolescent Sex, which was their first record.
Oh, yeah, that's
And-
not the one you need to listen to for the Duran Duran comparison.
Right, because I
That's
was like,
the-
this doesn't sound like Duran Duran. And it opened actually with the same keyboard wind sound as my band used to open and close our last record. I was like, oh my God, we've ripped off Japan. And I thought it was great. Like, it was sort of sleazy synth with a lot of guitar, and it felt more like Hanoi Rocks than Duran Duran. But then I listened, so I started listening like first record, second to last record. And I could see how the Duran Duran stuff clearly in the later days. But I didn't like that singer as much as I loved the first Japan record. I wasn't so keen on the later years. Because even the keyboards in those first records are fantastic, but the guitars overpower the keyboards.
Yeah, and I realized I call him David Sylvian, but it's Sylvain, right? Sylvian is, I think, what's the keyboard or the guitarist from the New York Dolls is Sylvain, right? So I always say David Sylvain instead of Sylvian or something like that.
Yeah, great band. I watched Knowing. I thought it was an interesting take on the Steven Spielberg boring disaster Close Encounters, and I also thought it was the most sincere sci-fi film I've ever seen. And those apocalyptic scenes were fantastic.
Yeah, I love the disaster scenes.
I watched Next. Knowing I thought was arguably entertaining. Next was terrible. Based on the novel The Golden Man by Philip K. Dick. I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
The ending was stolen by the film Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2. So, and Stephanie Meyer wrote the whole Twilight series as a Harry Potter fan fiction. So my question is, was Breaking Dawn Part 2 next fan fiction? I'll let the audience answer on our social media sites, please, audience. And then Julianne Moore was inexplicably terrible in that movie. Watch the Cobra Man episodes of Kamen Rider. It amazed me that you watched this show, Jim. It reminded me of like when we were kids and you just didn't have a lot of options on TV. You'd sit there and watch Kamen Rider like day in and day out because there's nothing else to watch. And then I was thinking about that. I was thinking about the channels we had at our disposal. You guys tell me if I've missed one. 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 32, 44, 64.
I don't even remember 64. That was later, right?
Yeah.
Oh, 60. MV60, right? That was the music video show was on 60, right?
Yeah. And
MV60.
there's 66 too.
Yeah. That was
That was
later.
later, yeah. But yeah, definitely like Kamen Rider would have been on Channel 44.
Definitely.
Right.
That's a channel 44.
They had like Ultraman was on Channel 44
Yeah, I watched a lot of Ultraman.
along with the White Sox. White Sox and Ultraman. That's Channel 44. Go White Sox. Yes.
How dare you? I'm going to edit that out. Last Man on Earth and Omega Man. Actually, I was really excited because Omega Man had the engineering building from the Warner Brothers lot used as a makeshift hospital in it. I was just excited to spot that set.
There's a moment in Omega Man you can actually see if you do something totally nerdy and just basically slow down or just rewind every time there's like a city shot. You know how they shot all those scenes of the abandoned Los Angeles,
Yeah.
in the early morning. Sometimes you can see a car go by if you look carefully in those wide shots.
I was watching. I think I saw one. When I thought about Last Man on Earth, I started thinking about, Last Man Standing. And then I thought about those two series. So you have Last Man on Earth goes to Omega Man, goes to I Am Legend. And then you have Yojimbo that goes to Fistful of Dollars, that goes to Last Man Standing, directed by Walter Hill, who's owed an apology by Richard Attenborough. And I thought it was interesting that both franchises' the middle movie, has an American tough guy who turned into a nut job. Clint Eastwood and Charlton Heston.
Charlton Heston, yeah, right wing kind of guys, yeah.
And Omega Man takes place in 2000. Oh no, Soylent Green. I watched 2022. So we're just 2 years away from Soylent
okay,
Green.
we're getting close to Soylent
Wow.
Green year. That's great.
And Dick Van Patten was in Soylent Green. I thought that was cool.
I forgot about that. Joseph Cotton, too, right, is the millionaire at the beginning
Right.
that they break into his house.
And then I watched Friday the 13th part 3, 4, and 5. And that in Friday the 13th
Which one is that? What happens in that one?
Well, in Friday the 13th part 5, a kid in a mental hospital goes crazy and chops up another kid with an axe. They haul the kid with the axe away, and an ambulance driver shows up to pick up this dead kid who got chopped up. And the ambulance driver goes crazy, and he knows that Tommy, the kid who killed Jason Voorhees in Friday the 13th part 4, is staying at the mental hospital. So the ambulance driver dresses up like Jason and kills everybody one by one, hoping they'll blame it on Tommy. And then at the end, they kill the ambulance driver, and Jason is never in the film.
Wow.
Yep.
So the Halloween 3 of the Friday the 13th series.
Carol Locatel is in Friday the 13th part 5. You may remember her as Ethel from Sharky's Machine. She plays one of the women of the night. And she also wears the exact same wig to play Mabel. Oh, wait, no. She was Mabel in Sharky's Machine. She was Ethel in Friday the 13th part 5. And then I watched The Killing Fields. Have you guys seen The Killing Fields?
Wow.
The old one? The one from 30 or 40 years ago?
Sam Watterson and
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been a long time
John Malkovich.
since I've.
Yeah,
And
it was
the guy who won did he win the Academy Award Best Supporting Actor? The guy who played the guy who actually had experienced the whole thing was in the movie.
He did.
What's
his name?
Yeah, he won the Academy
And-
Award.
Yeah.
I thought it was a non-romantic love story between two human beings in the midst of a systemic hate machine. A beautiful film, like that scene at the very end where they are reunited, played just like a love story. And I thought we need more movies that show that two people can be in love with one another without it being romantic. There was a horrifying and bizarre synth soundtrack by Mike Oldfield. Have you guys heard of Mike
Oh
Oldfield?
wow. Yes.
He-
Tubular Bells.
Tubular Bells, right, from The Exorcist. And have you seen this BBC performance on YouTube of Tubular Bells? Shot like the Raspberry Beret video?
No, I haven't seen that one. No.
Check it out. It's like chroma keyed. You know how in Raspberry Beret they like chroma key the background, but then they don't pay attention to what they're wearing, so the chroma key kind of comes out on all their jackets and stuff? They do the same thing in this awesome live performance of Tubular Bells. As we wrap up, guys, would you like to say what you're thankful for this week? Rick? What are you thankful for this week?
This is the kind of thing I hate. It's like trying that thing where it's like, tell us, something good that happened to you today. Tell us something bad and tell us something. Yeah, it's just like that introspective stuff. What am I thankful for? Jeez. Sorry.
I think that's your
I'm not a
answer. That was
sentimental
good.
person. I sound like a terrible person. I'm pretty thankful for what I have. I'm actually doing okay. Some rough stuff going on, but yeah, I'm thankful for my family and being able to talk to you guys. That's great. It's keeping me going. I'm a simple man.
I don't know if simple was the right term. Jim, what are you thankful for?
What do you think he's thankful for, Chris?
I'm thankful for the Sandhill cranes. They flew over today. Yesterday, they started flying over. They migrate. In the spring, they go one direction, and then around Thanksgiving, you hear them. It's like, oh, here they are. They're kind of like geese. They fly in these big V's, but they're giants. They're way bigger than geese. And you hear them, they make this crazy noise. And it's around this time. I always forget about them. And then it's like right around this time, it's like, oh yeah, it's just before Thanksgiving. And you hear this crazy cooing noise. And then you go outside and there are these giant birds flying. They fly really high up, so you can barely see them, but they're these huge formations and they make this warbling noise they're definitely not geese, so.
And it tells you winter's coming. It's time to change the ticking in your bed.
That's beautiful. Oh, I forgot to say what our next movie is. Our next movie is The Ballad of Cable Hogue by Sam Peckinpah. Thank you for joining me this evening. I'm very thankful for you both. And I'll also say that I'm thankful for Delicious Lido's Pizza. I quite like the personal pound of shrimp, or if I'm watching my waistline, I'll get the shrimp dinner and make a shrimp coleslaw sandwich out of that delicious baguette slice. It's exactly as the saying goes. Say it with me, fellas. It's all good at Lido's.
Lido's.
I'm waiting to see the money that you got. Some of that coming towards me. The money you have obviously gotten.
Oh, I'll tell you what. There absolutely is a check from Lido's Pizza to me to advertise on this podcast. Little Lido's payola.
Lost and Found and Rewound is fully funded by Lost and Found and Rewound Foundation funds. Lost and Found and Rewound does not use crowdfunding because our listeners have better things to do with their funding. There's no need to post reviews of Lost and Found and Rewound because our listeners have more valuable things to do with their time. In all sincerity, thank you for listening to the show. We truly appreciate it.
Lotus Pod.